Right, so I have got myself ready.
Well done.
So that was a task taking that off. Right, so shall we?
So,
do you want to have a look at?
Yeah, so I think we've already obviously had a quick look at you and everything's okay. But I think for people at home to understand what they need to do, I think it's very important that they just don't roll up a sleeve and try and find moles just by doing that. And the easiest option is for them to do it after a shower or when they're in their underwear, because we want to look everywhere from top to toe. And I think the commonest thing what we're aiming to do is to look for a mole that looks different from everything else.
Okay.
And with that, you're examining a whole body part in one go. And so you're just trying to see if there's any moles that stand out or look different.
So I've got quite a few, as you can see, everywhere. My arms, my legs are the same, and my back.
Yeah.
So someone like me, am I looking for new ones? What am I looking for? Because I'll be honest, I can't remember which one's which.
That's fair enough. So, and that's a common thing that people say. You go, look, doctor, how different does a mole need to be in order to be worrying? How much change is identifiable as change? And I think the most important thing is it just has to look different. Okay. They don't have to diagnose it themselves. That's what the doctor's for. They just have a low level of suspicion and then go to the doctor if they're concerned. And I think for you, I don't know if we're able to zoom in at all.
Yeah, we can see it.
But when we're looking up and down your arm, there isn't really anything that jumps out. Okay, you've got a slightly darker mole here. I don't know if we just rotate your roll around. So as you can see, that's quite a small mole. It's a little bit darker, but we've already examined you and we know that mole is normal for you because you have other moles that look like that. Now, if you didn't have other moles that look like that and that was new, then you might be a little bit more concerned by it and you might want to take a photo of it, you might want to monitor it. And I think from that point of view, what you're looking for is asymmetry. So you're looking for it to be irregular, you're looking for the colour to change, and you're looking for an irregular border as well.
Okay. And what about things like, for example, I'll go over here. So that is a mole next to, actually I've had one removed next to that. But this one sort of recently became raised and became a little bit itchy.
Yeah.
And that was sort of cause for concern. So what do we do with things like that?
So itchy moles, unfortunately, itchiness is not a great sign. So a lot of moles become itchy because they get dry, they get irritated. They often have a little hair follicle growing through them. So if the itchiness doesn't get worse or settles down after a few weeks, then it's not really anything to be worried about. But I think if it combine that with other changes, so change in size, change in shape, change in colour, then I think those are important things. So it's not just one thing on its own. Right,
so if it gets darker, bigger and itchy, then have a look. Yeah. Should we go back to this one? Because I believe we took a real, because you had a close look with, is that your
dermatoscope? Yes.
Dermatoscope.
So this is what we use to basically just have a closer look at the moles. It gives us an in-depth view and it means that we can just look at the architecture of it and it just gives us a better idea as to whether or not it needs to be sent off for testing.
Okay, so do you want to have a look through it? Because I think we can pick that up on the camera. Oh, we've taken a good picture of that. This is what you can see through your dermatoscope.
Correct. Yeah.
And you've got those little lines there. Talk us through what you're actually looking at.
So those little lines are basically a measurement scale. So those will give us an idea of how big the mole is. What we're normally looking for is anything bigger than 6 millimetres. So if you've got a mole that's bigger than 6 millimetres, has changed, then that's really what you're looking for.
And that's about?
That's about 2 by 3, yeah. Okay. So again, that's reassuring because it's quite small. But again, coming back to the main point, change is probably the key point.
Okay, and you recommend that people do this, obviously coming in and out of the shower or when they get a chance to stand in front of the mirror and head to toe?
Just look head to toe. If you've got a mirror, just look at your back because obviously that's the hardest point for people to look. But obviously if they've got a partner, they can have a look at it as well. So.
And just so, I mean, I mentioned I had one removed here. This is something that these are the kind of procedures that you do. So for people at home think, well, if I do find something unusual and the GP says, well, we better have a look at this, and you say, let's have a look at this. Can you just talk us through what actually happens for people who are wondering, well, what happens if I do find a mole that needs to be looked at?
Yeah, so first port of call, your GP.
Yeah.
The GP will then examine you, potentially with a dermatoscope, or clinically they'll have a good index of suspicion. And if they're worried, they'll refer you on to a specialist. at the specialist. If they're worried, they will then excise it. And then that's sent off to the lab, and that's the only way to then get a firm diagnosis as to what it is.
And I mean, don't want to go through the whole process, but you're able to cut it out, take it out.
Cut it out, get the whole thing out, send it off to the lab. They'll look at it under a microscope and they'll give a definitive diagnosis. Now, not every mole that is removed is abnormal. We do it for basically if there's a reason for suspicion and just to make sure that there isn't any potential early changes as well.
Okay. Well, look, it's time to hear from you now. Do you have a question about a mole? Get in touch with Dr. Ross. Call us 0207 862 2222. That's the number that you need to take part in our Health Check Week.